The world remembers Diana Spencer as the shy young woman who became a princess, a commoner lifted into royalty by marriage. But what if that story was never true? What if, hidden behind her gentle smile, she carried a bloodline older and more royal than the Windsors themselves? Her ancestry whispers of Tudors, Plantagenets, and dynasties erased from succession but never from history. Diana was not stepping into royalty for the first time. She was bringing it back. And in her, the crown unknowingly welcomed the return of England's lost heirs. For many years, the story of Princess Diana has been told as if she were an ordinary young woman who suddenly stepped into royalty. Newspapers in 1981 called her a commoner bride, and the world believed that she was entering a world far above her own background. This view made her marriage seem like a perfect fairy tale, a normal girl marrying into one of the oldest dynasties of Europe. Yet the truth is not so simple. Diana Spencer did not come from obscurity. Her family, the Spencers, were already part of the English nobility for centuries, with ties that reached far deeper into the roots of the monarchy than many realized. The idea of her being only a commoner overlooks the weight of history written in her family tree. But what if Diana's blood carried a secret the Tudors themselves tried to bury? The Spencer family was far from ordinary. Their rise began in the 16th century, when they built wealth through sheep farming and careful management of land. With that fortune, they purchased large estates and positioned themselves among the most respected gentry of England. Over time, the Spencers transformed their wealth into influence by seeking marriages that connected them to powerful noble families. They gained titles, entered parliament, and established themselves not just as landowners but as a family to be reckoned with at court. By the 17th century, they were counted among the great aristocratic houses, building their legacy at Althorpe, the family seat that later became Diana's childhood home. The Spencer story was never about sudden luck. It was about long-term planning. Each generation worked to secure alliances that pulled them closer to the center of English power. The Spencers were not simply wealthy landowners. They were strategically placing themselves close to royal bloodlines. The Tudors are remembered as one of England's most dramatic dynasties, and at the center stood Henry VIII. While his 6 marriages are famous, less discussed are the children he fathered outside of wedlock. In royal politics, illegitimate offspring could not claim the throne directly, yet their presence mattered. They often carried royal favor, gained lands or titles, and through marriage, their descendants mixed back into the noble class. Over generations, these side branches created quiet channels through which Tudor blood spread into families never officially recognized as heirs. These hidden links became part of the aristocratic network that shaped later history. Though not legitimate rulers, such descendants still carried the same DNA as the king himself, keeping his line alive in unexpected ways. And among those illegitimate children, one connection leads us straight to Diana. Mary Boleyn, the sister of the famous Anne Boleyn, was once the mistress of Henry VIII. Their relationship is well documented, though its exact details remain uncertain. During the years she was close to the king, Mary gave birth to children, including a daughter named Catherine Carey. Officially, Catherine was recognized as the child of Mary's husband, William Carey, but the timing of her birth raised questions that have never been fully answered. Many historians have suggested that Catherine may have been Henry VIII's own daughter, born from his affair with Mary. The king never acknowledged Catherine, but that does not erase the possibility of her true parentage. If she was indeed his child, then her descendants carried the blood of the Tudor monarch himself. Over time, the Carey family rose in prominence, and through intermarriages their line touched several noble houses. If Catherine Carey was truly Henry's daughter, the entire royal map changes, and Diana stands at the center of it. The Carey family carried a complicated reputation in the early years, given the rumors about Catherine Carey's possible royal paternity. Yet over time, they established themselves as respected members of the English nobility. Catherine married into the Knowles family, and her children secured places at court, serving under both Elizabeth I and later monarchs. Through loyalty and service, the Careys turned whispers of scandal into positions of honor. Their descendants blended into the upper ranks of society, building ties with families that shaped the political and social fabric of England. Each marriage extended their reach, weaving the Carey name deeper into the aristocratic web. This steady integration meant that, even if their origins carried questions, their influence was undeniable. The family's story shows how a line once surrounded by uncertainty could become part of the very establishment that ruled the country. But the Carey bloodline did not just vanish into obscurity, it resurfaced centuries later in the Spencer line. The link between the Spencers and the Careys was forged through generations of carefully chosen marriages. As the Carey line grew in influence, its descendants entered alliances with other noble families, and eventually those unions brought their blood into the Spencer tree. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the Spencers had absorbed not only wealth and prestige but also the hidden legacy of the Tudors through these ties. Genealogists tracing Diana's ancestry point to these unions as the moment when the question of Catherine Carey's true paternity becomes more than a distant rumor. If Catherine was indeed Henry VIII's daughter, then the Spencer family inherited a strand of royal blood that official history had set aside. This was not an isolated link but part of the Spencers' long strategy of marrying into families with royal connections. Through this connection, Diana unknowingly carried the blood of Henry VIII himself. Henry VIII did not often admit to fathering children outside of marriage, but one exception was Henry Fitzroy. Born to Elizabeth Blunt, a lady-in-waiting, Fitzroy was openly acknowledged by the king and given the titles of Duke of Richmond and Somerset. His recognition showed how deeply Henry valued him, even raising questions at the time about whether Fitzroy might one day be named heir. Yet Fitzroy's life was short. He died at just 17, leaving no legitimate children. Some historians argue that despite his early death, his wider family ties allowed traces of his blood to pass into the nobility through collateral lines and distant connections. Whether these threads directly reached the Spencers is debated, but the possibility adds another layer to Diana's heritage. If Fitzroy's blood also touched the Spencers, then Diana's Tudor inheritance doubled. In Tudor England, legitimacy was the dividing line between power and exclusion. Children born outside of marriage, even if they were the offspring of a king, were not considered lawful heirs to the throne. The monarchy depended on clear rules of succession to avoid civil conflict, and acknowledging illegitimate claims risked dangerous disputes. Henry VIII himself struggled to secure recognized heirs through his 6 marriages, and the instability of his reign showed how fragile the succession could be. For this reason, the children rumored or even proven to be his were carefully left out of official records. Their names might carry favor at court, but they could never be admitted into the line of succession. The stigma of illegitimacy meant that their blood was treated as politically worthless, even if biologically it was royal. But secrets erased from succession law could never be erased from blood. Diana's ancestry does not stop with the Tudors. Through another line, she also carried the legacy of the Plantagenets, one of the most powerful dynasties in medieval England. This connection came through the Beaufort family, descendants of John of Gaunt, son of King Edward III, and his companion Catherine Swynford. Their children were later legitimized by royal decree, yet a clause in the succession laws barred them and their heirs from ever claiming the crown. Despite this restriction, the Beauforts remained central figures in English politics, holding influence and marrying into many noble families. Over time, their blood mixed widely through the aristocracy, eventually reaching the Spencers. This meant that Diana represented not only a Tudor connection through Mary Boleyn's line, but also a Plantagenet inheritance through the Beauforts. Together with the Tudor strand, this made Diana's ancestry a silent archive of England's lost dynasties. By the time Diana married Prince Charles in 1981, the British monarchy had changed its appearance but not its roots. The ruling Windsor family traced much of its heritage to German houses, and only during World War I did they change their name from Saxe-Coburg and Gotha to Windsor in order to appear more English. While this rebranding was politically useful, the dynasty's bloodline remained narrow and continental. Diana, on the other hand, represented centuries of English nobility woven directly into the legacy of the Tudors, Plantagenets, and Beauforts. Her ancestry was deeply tied to the medieval and early modern families that had shaped the kingdom itself. In marrying her, the Windsors did more than bring in a young bride loved by the public. They drew back into the royal family a strand of English heritage that had long been sidelined. So when Diana entered St. Paul's Cathedral, it wasn't just a wedding, it was history circling back. Diana's bloodline did not end with her. Through her sons, William and Harry, the hidden threads of Tudor and Plantagenet ancestry continue into the present day. William, as heir to the throne, represents the moment when those forgotten dynasties return to the crown. In him, the Windsor line is joined with the legacy of Mary Boleyn's descendants and the Beaufort branch of the Plantagenets. While the official succession never recognized those families as heirs, their blood now flows in the future king. Harry, too, carries the same inheritance, linking both brothers to centuries of English history that was long excluded from power. This combination of Windsor's stability and Diana's deeper ancestry reshapes the meaning of the modern monarchy. The crown will rest on a head that unknowingly unites the lost heirs of England. Diana was never the commoner bride the world imagined. Behind the image of a young woman marrying into royalty was a lineage that stretched back to the Tudors, the Plantagenets, and the Beauforts. She carried in her veins the echoes of dynasties that had been written out of succession but never erased from history. By joining her life to the Windsors, she reintroduced those ancient strands into the monarchy, giving it a depth of English heritage it had long lacked. Her story shows that royal bloodlines are rarely lost. They simply wait for history to bring them forward again. Perhaps the real secret is that England's throne was never lost to the Tudors at all. It only waited in Diana to be reborn.